The Internal Revenue Service. January 27th payment window has a lot of people watching their bank accounts and asking the same thing. Are you in the early wave, or are you going to be stuck waiting while everyone else celebrates first? Right now, there is a swirl of claims online about stimulus style deposits, adjustment payments, and special releases tied to federal processing cycles. What matters for you is not the hype. What matters is understanding how government payments actually move, why some people see funds sooner than others, and what you can do today to avoid preventable delays. January 27th is not just a random day people picked for clicks. It sits in the middle of how federal money gets processed and routed. And that matters, because the government does not send deposits one by one like a person sending a payment from a phone app. These payments move in large batches. A file is created, verified, scheduled, and transmitted through Treasury systems, then sent through banking rails and card processors. Once that file is released, it becomes a chain reaction. The Treasury routes it, the receiving institutions process it, and then your bank or card provider decides when it actually shows as available in your account. That's why two people can both be eligible, both be in the same general period, and still see completely different outcomes. One person wakes up to a pending deposit message or an early release. Another sees nothing for a day or two. Another gets it even later. It can feel personal, like the system is playing favorites, but most of the time, it is the pipeline. Different banks, different posting policies, different verification rules, and different account types all affect timing. A big misunderstanding that fuels panic is the idea that a date equals a guaranteed deposit for everyone. Even if January 27th lines up with a large batch release, that does not mean every eligible person receives money on that exact day. In reality, there are waves inside the wave. Some institutions post quickly the moment the file is received. Some wait for the official settlement date. Some hold incoming government deposits until internal processing is completed. And some accounts, especially prepaid systems, can have their own posting timetable that is separate from traditional banks. It also helps to understand that not every deposit people call stimulus is actually a brand new stimulus program. Sometimes what arrives looks like a relief payment, but behind the scenes, it is a correction, an adjustment, or a catch-up amount tied to previously issued credits or benefits. If there was an underpayment, a miscalculation, a return that needed an adjustment, or a program that required a later reconciliation, money can move later as a make-up deposit. To you, it feels like surprise money. To the system, it's a repair. That is why you might see very different amounts being discussed. Some people may be talking about smaller adjustment deposits in the range of $100 to a few $100s. Others may be dealing with larger corrections tied to household circumstances, dependent information, or income-based credits. And some people might see multiple deposits over time instead of one single payment, depending on how their situation was categorized and how corrections were applied. Now let's talk about who tends to appear earlier in the queue when the federal government pushes out money in batches. Priority is often shaped by two simple things: how easy it is to verify you, and how reliable your payment information already is in federal systems. People who receive certain federal benefits often have verified identity data and established direct deposit records that are already active. That can make them easier to include in earlier waves whenever a payment type is tied to existing benefit pipelines. If you receive Social Security benefits and you use direct deposit, your information is typically already confirmed and stable in the system. The same is often true for people receiving disability-related benefits and those who have long-standing payment methods on file. Veterans receiving certain benefits may also have streamlined routing because the payment data is already coordinated through federal channels. None of this is a guarantee of first in line for every situation, but it explains why these groups are frequently discussed when people talk about early waves. After that, payments tied to tax filing history can come into play. Households that previously qualified for income-based credits, families with dependents, and people whose records show consistent filing and matching information can be easier to process. On the other hand, people who changed banks recently, moved, had a name mismatch, had identity verification issues, or had returns delayed for review can be pushed into later waves or slower methods. And here's the part that matters just as much as your category: your delivery method. Direct deposit is usually the fastest path because it goes straight through the banking network to your account. Prepaid cards can be fast too, but timing depends on the specific processor and how they post funds. Paper checks or mailed debit cards are almost always slower because printing, sorting, and postal delivery add days or weeks. So when you hear someone say, people are getting paid first, what they often mean is, people with direct deposit and fast posting banks are seeing it first. That difference in posting speed creates the online chaos every single time. Someone posts that they got paid early, and suddenly thousands of people assume it is universal. Then someone else says nothing arrived, and rumors explode. It was canceled. It's fake. Only certain people got it. The government ran out. Most of that noise is just the reality of staggered posting. A deposit can be on the way and still not be visible in your account yet because your institution has not made it available. There are also a few common reasons payments show up later, even when you are eligible. If your bank account information changed, the payment might bounce and trigger a reissue process. If your return or record is under review, an automated hold can occur while the system confirms details. If your identity needs verification, your payment can be paused until the verification step is completed. If your address is outdated and the system defaults to mail, you can lose time simply because the payment is traveling the slowest route. If any of that happens, it does not automatically mean you lose the money. More often, it means you move into a later wave or a different delivery method. That is why it is so important not to treat January 27th like a one-shot moment where you either win or you're done. Federal payment activity can include follow-up files, correction batches, and reissue waves in early February and beyond. Missing one window does not always mean missing the payment altogether. It can mean your timing is different. So what should you do right now, in practical terms, to protect yourself from delays and confusion? Start with your payment information. If you filed taxes and used direct deposit, make sure the bank account on your most recent return is still open and accurate. If you receive federal benefits, review your benefit statements or account settings to confirm where your payments are routed. If you changed banks recently, understand that old information can cause a return to sender situation, which adds time. Next, use your bank's tools instead of social media rumors. Many banks and card providers show pending deposits or send alerts when a government payment is incoming. If you see a pending item, do not assume it is canceled just because it is not available immediately. Pending often means the bank has received notice and is processing it through internal steps. Some institutions release early as a courtesy. Others release only when settlement occurs. Different does not mean wrong. Also, be careful about letting excitement turn into expensive mistakes. When people expect money on a specific day, they sometimes schedule bills, overdraft, or borrow based on a date that was never guaranteed for their situation. A safer move is to treat the date as a possible window, not a promise. Plan for a range of days, and keep a buffer if you can. That one mindset shift reduces stress and prevents spiraling when the deposit does not appear at sunrise. Now, let's address the emotional side directly, because it's real. Money pressure is heavy, rent is high, groceries cost more, utilities can spike. If you are relying on federal payments, even a small deposit can mean food, medicine, or keeping the lights on. That's why these dates feel huge. Hope rises fast, and disappointment can hit even faster when expectations are built on rumors. The goal here is clarity, not panic. A processing window can be important without being universal, and your situation can be valid even if your timing is different from someone else's. It also helps to keep a bigger picture perspective. Early year windows are often when systems reconcile records, correct past issues, and push updates through pipelines that were slowed during the holidays. That can lead to a noticeable cluster of payments, adjustments, and corrections in late January and into February. When people see that activity, it can feel like something big is happening, and sometimes it is simply the system catching up and closing out issues from previous periods. Either way, the best thing you can do is stay grounded in what you can control: accurate information, accurate accounts, and realistic timelines. If you are waiting on funds and you do not see anything by the end of the week around January 27th, that is when you shift from watching to checking. Look for official tools and official status updates related to your specific payment type. Confirm your deposit details. If you know your bank information is correct and you still have no movement for an extended period, that is when it makes sense to follow formal steps for tracing or resolving, rather than refreshing social media comment sections that mix real experiences with guesses and misinformation. And here is the reassurance to hold on to: government payments move in batches and waves. The system is not built to deliver every deposit at the same minute to every person. That is why your neighbor can get it earlier, your friend can get it later, and you can be right in the middle. Timing differences are common. The key is making sure you are positioned for the fastest method available to you and that your information does not trigger a preventable delay. As you move through this week, keep your focus on steady actions. Make sure your direct deposit information is accurate. Watch your bank alerts instead of chasing rumors. Treat January 27th as a meaningful processing point, not a guaranteed personal payday. If your deposit comes early, great. If it comes on the date, great. If it comes after, that can still be normal depending on your bank and your category. The most important thing is not losing your footing emotionally. While the system does what it always does: process, route, and release in waves. If you found this explanation helpful, pass it along to someone who is stressed and confused right now. Clarity spreads faster than rumors when people share calm, practical information. Stay alert, stay prepared, and keep your expectations realistic while you keep your accounts ready. Your money matters, and being informed is one of the strongest tools you have when the timing feels uncertain.